Declan Foster adjusted his tie for the third time, his reflection in the cafe window showing a man far more nervous than any CEO should be about a simple coffee date. At 36, he'd built Foster Investments into one of the most successful firms in the country. But no amount of business acumen had prepared him for the world of dating as a single father. His daughter Riley, 4 years old with blonde hair and her mother's bright smile, sat on the chair beside him, swinging her legs and humming to herself. She wore her favorite pink dress, the one she insisted was fancy enough for meeting a princess. "Remember what we talked about, Riley Bug?" Declan said gently. "This is just a grown-up meeting. The nice lady is a friend of Aunt Melissa's, and we're going to have coffee and be polite." "But Aunt Melissa said she might be my new mommy," Riley said with the brutal honesty of a 4-year-old. Declan shot a mental curse at his well-meaning sister, who'd set up this blind date and apparently filled Riley's head with expectations. Aunt Melissa was hopeful, not realistic. "This is just coffee, sweetheart. Don't get your hopes up." The truth was that Declan's hopes weren't up either. This was his 5th blind date in as many months, each one arranged by friends who were concerned about him raising Riley alone. Each date had gone the same way. Polite conversation, visible discomfort when Riley was mentioned, and mutual agreement that this wasn't quite right. Most women weren't interested in dating a man with a young daughter. Those who were interested seemed to view Riley as an obstacle to overcome, rather than an integral part of any potential relationship. Declan had learned to read the signs, the forced smile when Riley was mentioned, the quick calculation in their eyes about whether he was worth the baggage. "There she is," Declan said, spotting a blonde woman in a red dress entering the cafe. His sister had shown him a photo. Claire Hammond, 29, worked in nonprofit management, loved reading and hiking. Pretty, accomplished, and theoretically open to dating someone with a child. Claire spotted them and approached with a warm smile that seemed genuine. "Declan, I'm Claire." "And you must be Riley. Your Aunt Melissa told me so much about you." Riley studied Claire with the serious intensity children use when sizing up adults. "You're very pretty," she announced. "Like a princess." "Thank you," Claire said, her smile widening. "And you look like a princess yourself in that beautiful dress." So far, so good, Declan thought. At least she was making an effort with Riley. They settled into their table, and a server brought coffee for the adults and hot chocolate with extra marshmallows for Riley. The conversation started well enough. Claire was easy to talk to, asking intelligent questions about Declan's work, while also engaging Riley in discussions about her favorite cartoons and toys. But Declan could see the strain starting to show. Claire's attention was divided, her answers becoming shorter when Riley interrupted with questions. She kept glancing at her phone, and there was a quality to her laughter that felt rehearsed rather than genuine. "So, Riley?" Claire said during a lull in conversation. "Do you spend a lot of time with your daddy?" "All the time," Riley said happily. "Daddy works from home lots so he can be with me. We have tea parties and read stories and go to the park." "That's nice," Claire said, but Declan heard the unspoken question. How would dating work if he was always with his daughter? The conversation limped along for another 20 minutes. Declan was about to suggest they wrap things up when Riley suddenly climbed down from her chair and walked around to Claire's side of the table. "Miss Claire," Riley said, looking up at her with those big, earnest eyes that could melt Declan's heart in seconds. "Are you my new mommy?" The silence that followed was deafening. Claire's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, panic, discomfort. She looked at Declan as if he'd orchestrated this moment, which he absolutely hadn't. "Riley, sweetheart." "We talked about this," Declan said gently, his heart breaking for his daughter. "But Aunt Melissa said you were looking for a mommy for me," Riley said, her voice small and confused. "I need a mommy. All my friends have mommies. Why can't I have one?" Claire looked like she wanted to disappear through the floor. "Riley, honey, it's not that simple. Don't you like me?" Riley asked, and her eyes were starting to fill with tears. "I can be really good. I'll clean my room and eat my vegetables, and I won't cry even when I'm sad. Please, can you be my mommy?" Declan reached for his daughter, but Riley had already taken Claire's hand, holding it with desperate hope. And that's when everything fell apart. Riley, Claire gently extracted her hand, her face a mask of pity and discomfort. I'm very sorry, but I can't be your mommy. You're a sweet girl, but I'm not ready for... She looked at Declan. I'm sorry, but this isn't going to work. I didn't realize she'd be so attached to the idea. Claire stood, grabbing her purse. I should go. I'm sorry, Declan. Riley, you're a lovely child, but I'm just not... She didn't finish the sentence, just turned and walked out of the cafe. Riley watched her go, then turned to her father with tears streaming down her face. What did I do wrong, Daddy? Why doesn't anybody want to be my mommy? Declan pulled his daughter into his arms, his own eyes stinging with tears. You didn't do anything wrong, Riley Bug. You're perfect exactly as you are. Then why doesn't anybody stay? Riley sobbed into his shoulder. Why doesn't anybody want us? Declan had no answer. He just held his daughter while she cried in the middle of the cafe, feeling like the worst father in the world for putting her through this. They were still sitting there 15 minutes later, Riley's sobs having subsided into hiccups, when someone approached their table. Excuse me? A soft voice said. I'm so sorry to intrude, but I was sitting at the next table and I couldn't help but overhear. Declan looked up to find a young woman with auburn hair and kind eyes standing beside them. She wore jeans and a simple sweater and held a worn paperback book. I really don't mean to be nosy, she continued, but I think you might need this more than I do right now. She held out the book, a children's story called The Family We Choose. What is it? Riley asked, her voice still thick with tears. It's about a little penguin who's looking for a family, the woman explained, kneeling down to Riley's level. She keeps trying to fit in with different groups, the seals, the polar bears, the Arctic foxes. But none of them feel quite right. Then one day, she realizes that family isn't about matching or fitting perfect patterns. It's about finding the people who love you for exactly who you are. Riley took the book, her small fingers tracing the cover. Does the penguin find a family? She does, the woman said with a gentle smile. Not the family she thought she was looking for, but the one she needed. Sometimes the best things in life surprise us. Thank you, Declan said, his voice rough. That's very kind of you. The woman stood and met his eyes, and there was something in her gaze that spoke of understanding rather than pity. I've been where you are, she said quietly. Not exactly, but close enough. It gets better, I promise. Were you in line for coffee? Declan found himself asking. Can I buy you a cup to thank you? I already have mine, she said, gesturing to her table where a half-full mug sat beside her laptop. But thank you. She started to leave, but Riley suddenly grabbed her hand. Wait, what's your name? I'm Haley, she said. Haley Morrison. Thank you for the book, Haley, Riley said with the solemn politeness of a child who'd been raised to mind her manners. Will you sit with us while Daddy reads it to me? Riley, I'm sure Haley is busy. Declan started. Actually, Haley said, glancing at her laptop, I'm just working on emails. I can spare 20 minutes for a story. So Haley Morrison joined them, pulling up a chair, and Declan read the story of the little penguin who learned that family comes in all shapes and sizes. Riley sat on his lap, occasionally reaching out to touch the illustrations, and Haley listened as attentively as if she'd never heard the story before. When the book ended, Riley looked at Haley thoughtfully. The penguin found a walrus family that loved her. Do you think I'll find a family like that? You already have a family, Haley said gently. You have your daddy, and from what I've heard, an Aunt Melissa who cares about you very much. But not a mommy, Riley said, her voice small. No, not right now, Haley agreed. But maybe someday you'll find someone who chooses to love you, not because they have to, but because they want to. That kind of love is pretty special. They talked for another 30 minutes. Haley asked Riley about her favorite things, listened with genuine interest, and treated her like a person rather than an inconvenience. Declan found himself relaxing, actually enjoying conversation with a woman for the first time in months. I should really get back to work, Haley said eventually, but it was lovely meeting you both. Haley, Declan said before she could leave, would you like to have coffee sometime? Real coffee, I mean. Not just a spontaneous story session. Haley looked at him with those kind, understanding eyes. Is this because you're looking for a mother for Riley, or because you actually want to get to know me? The honesty of the question caught Declan off guard. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe both? But mostly because in 30 minutes you've treated my daughter with more genuine warmth than anyone else I've met in months. And because you gave her a book about family instead of walking away from her pain. I'll tell you what, Haley said. I'll give you my number. But before you call, I need you to think about what you actually want. Not what your sister wants, not what you think Riley needs, but what you want. Because I've dated men who were looking for a mother for their kids and it never ends well. If you want to get to know me as a person, call me. If you're just looking to fill a role, please don't. She handed him a business card, Haley Morrison, social worker, and left. That night, Declan put Riley to bed and then sat alone with Haley's card. What did he want? He'd been so focused on finding a mother for Riley that he'd forgotten to think about what he needed as a person, not just as a father. He thought about his late wife, Rebecca, who died in a car accident when Riley was 6 months old. The grief had been overwhelming, but he'd pushed through it for Riley's sake. He'd been a good father, present and loving, but he'd stopped being Declan, the person. He'd become Declan, Riley's father, and that was his only identity. 3 days later, he called Haley. I've been thinking about what you said, Declan told her. You were right. I've been looking for a mother for Riley, not a partner for myself. And that's not fair to anyone, especially not Riley. That's a brave realization, Haley said. I'd like to get to know you, Declan continued. Not as a potential stepmother, but as Haley, the woman who gave a crying child a book and stayed to hear a story. The person who saw through my desperation to the actual problem underneath. I'd like that too, Haley said. But I have conditions. Which are? No more blind dates with Riley present. She's been hurt enough. If we're going to explore this, we do it slowly. We get to know each other as adults first. Riley doesn't meet me again until we're both sure this is something real. That makes sense, Declan agreed. And you need to stop looking for a mother for Riley. She has a father who loves her. That's not nothing. She doesn't need you to force-fit someone into a role. She needs you to be present and whole, not desperate and searching. You're absolutely right, Declan said, and meant it. They dated for 6 months before Haley met Riley again. By then, Declan had done the work Haley suggested. Therapy to process his grief. Time to rediscover who he was beyond being Riley's father. Honest conversations about what he wanted from a relationship. When Haley finally came to dinner at their house, Riley didn't recognize her at first. Then memory clicked and she lit up. You're the book lady. You gave me the penguin story. I am, Haley said with a warm smile. Your dad and I have been getting to know each other, and I wanted to see you again. Are you Daddy's girlfriend? Riley asked with typical childhood bluntness. I am, Haley confirmed. Is that okay with you? Riley thought about this seriously. Are you going to leave like the other ladies? I can't promise I'll never leave, Haley said honestly, kneeling down to Riley's level. Life is complicated and nobody can see the future. But I can promise that if I'm here because I want to be. Not because I'm trying to be your mother, but because I care about you and your daddy. Do you want to be my mommy? Riley asked. Someday, maybe, Haley said. But right now I'm just Haley, your dad's girlfriend who likes spending time with both of you. Is that enough? Riley considered this, then nodded. Yeah, that's enough. Want to see my room? A year later, Haley moved in. 2 years after that, she and Declan married in a small ceremony, where Riley served as flower girl and read a passage from The Family We Choose during the vows. At the reception, Riley asked Haley, Can I call you Mom now? You can call me whatever feels right to you, Haley said. Mom Haley, how like your dad does. I'll answer to anything as long as it comes from you. I think, Mom Haley, Riley decided, because you're my mom. But you're still Haley, too. That's perfect, Haley said, pulling her stepdaughter into a hug. Years later, when Riley was a teenager, she asked her father about that day in the cafe when she'd asked a stranger to be her mother. I was so embarrassed for years, Riley admitted. I thought I'd ruined everything. You didn't ruin anything, Declan assured her. You reminded me that desperation isn't the same as love, that I needed to stop trying to force pieces to fit and start building something real. But what if Haley hadn't been there? What if she hadn't given me that book? Then eventually, I would have figured it out another way, Declan said. But I'm grateful it was Haley. She showed both of us that family isn't about filling roles or meeting expectations. It's about people choosing each other over and over, because the choice feels right. Because that's what Declan learned in that cafe, from a woman who interrupted a stranger's crisis with a children's book and a gentle lesson about chosen family. That love isn't about rescue or filling voids, but about two whole people deciding to build something together. Riley's desperate question had been heartbreaking, but it led them to an answer neither had expected. That sometimes the best family is the one we choose not out of desperation, but out of genuine connection, patience, and the courage to let relationships grow at their own pace rather than forcing them into prescribed shapes. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that family is built through choice and patience rather than desperation, and that our children's needs are best met when we take care of our own healing first, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories about blended families, second chances, and learning that love works best when we stop trying to force it. Comment below about learning to let relationships grow naturally, or about a time when slowing down led to something better than you'd rushed toward. Sometimes the family we're seeking finds us when we stop desperately searching and start genuinely living.